An empty blind date turned amazing. How a surprising mistake transformed a CEO's life forever. Jack Thompson, at 35, felt as if he stood at the base of a treacherous mountain. In the bustling heart of Chicago, his ambitions as a marketing executive were suffocated by the shadows of instability. Stuck at a firm teetering on the brink of collapse, it felt as if he were climbing an endless uphill battle. Each failure compounded against him, laying a blanket of anxiety over his every decision. The night his sister pushed him into a blind date felt like yet another expectation adding weight to his weary shoulders. As he stepped into the diner, nerves prickled at his skin. He wasn't just walking into a restaurant. He was entering a crucible of disappointment. He spotted a table that appeared to belong to no one, just another empty spot in his turbulent life. Yet, instead of being left alone with disappointment, a voice from across the aisle rang out. "Stay!" An elderly gentleman called. Jack, taken aback, froze for a moment. He could either be shamed by his social blunder or embrace this unexpected connection. Resilience flickered in the old man's eyes as they struck up a conversation. Mr. Harris, the gentleman, wove stories of his glory days as a former CEO, illustrating a path paved with struggles and setbacks, just as Jack's had been. As they talked, light laughter punctuated the air, slowly chip away at Jack's unease. Yet every time he shared a frustration, whether it was his financial woes, dreaming big amidst mounting debts, or the burden of feeling unseen by corporate giants, an uncomfortable truth twisted in his gut. Could he embrace this newfound camaraderie, or would it just serve as another reminder of his stagnation? Before Jack could fully catch his breath, the conversation turned deeper. "You're sitting on a gold mine," Mr. Harris said, his tone earnest, as he leaned closer, gauging Jack's reaction. "You're more than a cog in some advertising machine. You have potential, and I'd say it runs deeper than you know." The weight of those words crashed into Jack, tightening the knot of conflict raging within him. He felt his heart race, yet ice gripped his mind. What was this promise of potential? In a world that thrived on profit and superficial success, did he dare seek a greater purpose, one rooted in community and legacy rather than empty sales pitches? As their conversation unfolded, Mr. Harris made a revelation that rattled Jack's core. He suspected Jack might be the heir to transformative technology created by Jack's late father, a truth buried beneath the corporate dust bunnies. Anguish surged through Jack. The prospect opened a Pandora's box of confusion. The dream he once had of honoring his father's vision began to collide violently with the harsh reality of his present. Should he leap toward a daunting legacy or remain in the emotionally safe yet stifling confines of marketing air fresheners? Suddenly, the diner felt smaller, the world outside seemed ominous, and it hit him the imminent choice before him stretched infinitely. Just then, the weight of possibility felt suffocating. Each breath carried not just the air of uncertainty but the gravity of potential paths. Before he could resolve the chaos brewing within, Jack's train of thought was interrupted, pulling him further into tumult. "Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue." Jack caught Mr. Harris's gaze and saw more than just kind eyes. He saw an opportunity entwined with his legacy. The fear of stepping into the unknown tangled with excitement, creating a cocktail of raw emotion that threatened to spill over. Where was the path leading? Doubt crept back in, reminding him of the consequences of failure. What was his true calling? At that moment, as Jack prepared to leave the diner, the urgency of his choice gnawed at him. The lingering questions coiled tightly around his thoughts. Could this encounter with Mr. Harris be the defining moment he had longed for? Or would fear snuff it out? The path ahead shimmered with uncertainty and risks, yet, in that uncertainty lay a magnetic promise. What if he could change not just his life, but the lives of many? Little did Jack know, he was only beginning to scratch the surface of a life-altering decision that awaited just beyond those diner doors. As Jack stepped out of the diner, the cool Chicago air wrapped around him, grounding him momentarily. The cacophony of city life blurred into a distant hum as he grappled with the weight of Mr. Harris's words. Each step felt painstaking, as if he were trudging through quicksand instead of bustling sidewalks. The revelation of the potential technology, a remnant of his father's vision, danced at the periphery of his thoughts, taunting him with a tantalizing allure that felt both promising and terrifying. Could he really consider pursuing this path? The marketing world that he currently inhabited seemed so starkly different from the grand legacy of innovation that his father had left behind. Doubts piled in his mind like bricks, weighing him down further. What if he failed? What if he was not equipped to honor his father's legacy? Shaking off the nagging uncertainty, he briskly walked toward his office, desperate to find clarity amidst the chaos surrounding him. At work, Jack's usually vibrant surroundings felt muted and desaturated. Colleagues greeted him with forced smiles, engaged in their mundane routines, their lives seemingly uneventful compared to the whirlwind brewing inside Jack. As he unlocked his office door, the familiar scent of stale coffee and polished wood met him, but instead of comfort, it prompted a visceral reaction, a sense of entrapment. He sat down at his desk but couldn't focus. His mind swirled with the possibilities and decisions he faced after that unexpected encounter. Glancing out of his window, Jack's thoughts coalesced into a single question: what did he truly want? The answer eluded him, slipping through the cracks of his burgeoning anxiety. For years, he had operated within the boundaries set by others, driven by success metrics, quarterly reports, and client meetings. But now, with this new dynamic emerging from his past, he felt the undeniable pull towards something greater. With a deep breath, he grabbed a notepad, a tool that had spared him from burnout before. Writing down his thoughts, he articulated the predicaments he faced. Was he ready to embrace the fear of stepping into the unknown and forging a legacy? Or would he resign himself to a stifling career without taking the risk? Scribbling down ideas spurred a flicker of inspiration. Right there, in his office, he outlined a strategy for personal exploration, a plan to uncover the technology that was his birthright. A sudden urgency stirred within him. Each bullet point he penned transformed from mere musings into actionable steps. Research would lead him to the intricacies of his father's invention, dormant and requiring resurrection. Jack's heart raced with determination. He realized that in order to claim his potential, he needed to venture beyond the realm of marketing air fresheners and discomfort towards something raw and real. Fueled by newfound purpose, Jack spent the next few days immersing himself in research. Late nights were filled with dusty patent archives, conversations with industry collaborators, and exploring what he could piece together. But the weight of family expectations hung in the air like a specter. Would his late father's partners be open to an heir stepping into his shoes? Would they support a man who felt like a stranger to the legacy? As he pieced it all together, the fragmented puzzles of his past began to yield insights into his father's vision, one that could transform lives. A hidden spark ignited hope in Jack, pushing him further into the depths of pioneering technology. He felt apprehensive but alive. He wasn't just digging through history, he was reclaiming an identity. That night, standing at his window gazing over the city, the once intimidating skyline now radiated possibilities. Jack could feel change electrifying the air around him. But before he could mold this vision into reality, one question clung relentlessly to his thoughts. How could he convince the very people who had once dismissed him that he was serious this time? It was then that Jack made an impulsive decision. He would reach out to Mr. Harris. Again, this time not just as a casual dining companion, but as a business ally. He needed guidance. As he typed the email, his heart pounded with anticipation. Would this next step pull him closer to realizing his father's dream, or plunge him deeper into uncertainty? As he hit send, the weight of his choices hung heavily above him. He had stepped onto a path from which there was no return. Did he possess the courage to confront whatever lay ahead? With a mix of fear and exhilaration, Jack felt that somehow, this shifting landscape might finally lead him to the man he was meant to become. The next morning arrived, washed in the soft amber glow of dawn filtering through Jack's window. He awoke, with a jolt, the remnants of his impulsive decision bubbling to the surface. Had he really reached out to Mr. Harris? Was he truly prepared to take this leap? His heart raced, the excitement trembling beneath layers of doubt. Pulling on a pair of jeans and a simple t-shirt, Jack faced the mirror. The man staring back was familiar yet oddly distant, a version of himself that had lived comfortably in the shadows of others. This would change today. He needed to own this identity, to step boldly into a realm that promised innovation and challenge. Jack arrived at work, a stark contrast to the anxious emotions clouding his thoughts. He immersed himself in the details of his job. Emails flew between team members, data charts reflected trends, but Jack felt a growing detachment with each task. His mind buzzed with excitement over the potential collaboration ahead. Each moment felt like a distraction from what truly mattered, the legacy he was beginning to reclaim. Mid-morning saw Jack inside the conference room, surrounded by familiar faces in the midst of a presentation on a new ad campaign. Focusing was an uphill battle. He jotted down ideas for his father's technology on a notepad, doodling circuits and possibilities while nodding unconsciously to the points being made around the table. A colleague, Kim, noticed his absent demeanor and shot him a curious glance. "Everything okay, Jack?" she asked, brow furrowing slightly in concern. "Yeah, just thinking," he replied, the words tasting like an admission of weakness. He couldn't risk collapsing into discussion about his personal journey in this moment. The feeling of isolation crept back. He was trapped between two worlds, one he wished to outgrow and another that felt increasingly like a responsibility. He left the meeting prematurely, an act of defiance against a life that felt too restrictive. Instead, he found solace in a corner of the office, shrouded in the sounds of muffled conversations. Pulling out his phone, he reread the email he had sent to Mr. Harris. The anticipation mingled with apprehension, but the lingering question was now clear: what if Harris dismissed him once again? Suddenly, the sound of the notification broke through his reverie. An email had arrived from Mr. Harris. Jack's hands trembled slightly as he opened it, scanning the message quickly. Harris was interested in meeting. They needed to discuss the technology. Relief washed over him, but alongside it was a wave of anxiety. Suddenly this was real. As the afternoon faded into evening, Jack prepared for the meeting with Harris, intent on being more than just the son of a legacy, but a force igniting meaningful change. He reviewed everything he had collected, the insights, the blueprints, the future he envisioned. Each document represented a step toward personal evolution, a reclaiming of his father's imagination. At the cafe where they had agreed to meet, Jack arrived early, pacing nervously as he rehearsed his presentation. The ambience buzzed with laughter and the clinking of coffee cups, a stark contrast to the thoughts swirling in his mind. What if he misrepresented his father's vision? Would he be able to handle the weight of their expectations? He spotted Mr. Harris entering, looking confident and composed. As they exchanged greetings, Jack felt the familiar tremor of his insecurities creeping in again. Would he falter in articulating his ideas? But as they settled in, and conversation flowed, Jack found his voice amidst the uncertainty. He dove into the heart of the technology, where passion for innovation drowned out doubt. One idea transformed into another, and suddenly the gaps between them began to fill with possibility. Harris leaned in, intrigued by Jack's enthusiasm, offering insights that challenged Jack's understanding but also inspired him to dig deeper. Yet, amidst this stimulating exchange, the shadows of doubt lingered. Would this opportunity be enough to bridge the gulf between his current self and the man he aspired to become? Just as Jack thought the air was clearing, Harris posed a question that left him reeling. "What makes you think you're ready to lead this charge?" In an instant, the self-doubt threatened to consume him. The moment had come to confront the buried fears that had long shadowed his ambitions. Jack inhaled deeply, feeling the weight of the question settle in his gut. This was more than just a conversation, it was a reckoning with his identity and aspirations. He knew the time had come to face not only Mr. Harris but the very core of his fears and the definition of his legacy. Would he falter again or rise to the occasion? As thoughts raced through his mind, he sensed a pivotal choice looming ahead. How could he encompass not only his father's vision but also forge his own path? With the determination starting to solidify within him, Jack prepared to answer, aware that the question had opened a door leading to the depths of his potential. Would this be the moment of transformation he sought, or would it mark yet another stumble along the journey? Jack felt the weight of Harris's question settle like a thick fog, wrapping around him and threatening to choke the very words he so desperately wanted to unleash. The cafe buzzed around them, an indirect reminder of the world moving forward, but he was momentarily frozen in place, the enormity of the inquiry bearing down on him. What made him ready? The cogs of his mind turned rapidly, thoughts colliding with one another in a frenzied dance. He could reflect on his father's legacy, the deep-seated knowledge embedded within him, and the countless hours he'd spent surrounded by innovation. Yet, would those explanations ring true? Would they transcend his doubts, as massive as they loomed? Suddenly, he realized that it wasn't just about what qualified him, but how he framed his experiences. "I think," he began, when the words finally broke free, "I'm ready because I've spent my entire life learning from the dream my father had. I understand his vision deeply, and I know how groundbreaking it could be, not just for our company, but for how we interact with technology." His voice gained volume, conviction electrifying the air between them. Jack leaned forward, buoyed by a newfound sense of purpose. "More than that, I've seen the gaps and the opportunities. I want to explore those spaces to not only take up my father's mantle but to breathe new life into it. I aim to bring a new perspective to his aspirations and push boundaries he only dreamed of." He felt the air shift, sensing Harris's interest peaking. "You talk about innovation," Harris said, studying Jack's expression. "But every innovation faces resistance. What will you do when faced with challenges?" The question stung. Jack had always feared scrutiny, yet he sensed this was an invitation and opening to reveal his core strength. "Challenges are a part of the creative process. They're the proving ground," he asserted. "My father faced refusals, too. But he never let it deter him. I intend to learn from setbacks and iterate. Instead of seeing problems as walls, I'll treat them as doorways to further insights." Harris nodded, his interest morphing into something more profound: respect. Jack could see it, almost like light illuminating their discussion. But even as excitement surged inside him, a flicker of doubt remained. Murmurs of past failures echoed in his mind, threatening to disrupt his momentum. What if these ideas belonged to someone more capable? Perhaps his father's legacy was too demanding, requiring capabilities Jack wasn't sure he possessed. The thought lingered, crackling at the edges of his resolve. "Tell me, Jack," Harris pressed, his voice sharp yet curious. "What's been your biggest fear going into this project?" The question sliced deeper, inviting Jack to peel back even more layers. The answer bubbled to the surface, raw and unfiltered. "I fear becoming a shadow of my father's expectations. I don't want to be seen just as his son, but as an innovator in my own right. I want to make decisions grounded in my vision rather than live up to footprints laid before me." Jack's breath caught slightly at his own revelation. Vocalizing such a vulnerability felt like stripping away his armor, yet the action created space for authenticity. "Then harness that fear," Harris urged, a challenge ignited in his eyes. "Let it fuel you, transform it. That fire can be what distinguishes you." Jack nodded, absorbed in the inspiration igniting within him. He wasn't just here to fulfill an expectation. He was carving out his legacy, rooted in his father's but revamped with his unique experiences and insights. The cafe atmosphere shifted, and as Jack looked into Harris's eyes, he realized this conversation wasn't just an opportunity, it was an awakening. He felt ready, transformed by the moment into someone who could acknowledge fear without being paralyzed by it. The conversation continued, ideas bouncing back and forth, building on their shared vision, but Jack knew that his earlier doubts had not vanished completely. A primal question burgeoned in his mind, much like it had before: was he truly capable of challenging the status quo, of leading where others had followed? As tension settled in the room again, the weight of responsibility pulled at him. It became clear that it was more than a mere answer he was crafting. It was a declaration of courage that demanded action. Just as he began to feel his footing secure, Harris threw down another gauntlet. "If you're ready to step up, there are risks involved. Are you willing to sacrifice comfort for the sake of growth?" Jack took a breath, the air thick with expectancy. His response could shape his path ahead, a trajectory not just for him, but for his father's legacy and a future he would create. This was the moment he sensed a choice emerging, one that could define everything that came next. Would he persist in this pursuit of transformation, or retreat back into the life that was safe yet suffocating? The choice hung heavy in the air, and Jack realized he stood on the brink of a significant leap forward. The pivotal decision awaited him, quivering at the edges of possibility. What would he choose? The silent intensity wrapped around him like a cloak. It was time to step fully into the role he envisioned, but first, he would need to confront the risks lurking just below the surface. Would he embody the leader he yearned to be, or would he wait for a more convenient moment? Jack's heart raced, the atmosphere thick with unspoken expectations as he prepared to confront his reality. The weight of Harris's challenge lingered like an electric current in the air, urging him to make a choice. Comfort often masquerades as security, Jack mused, his thoughts swirling. He could almost feel the shadows of his past entwined with the decision he was about to make. Comfort had never fueled innovation, it was an anchor, perhaps even a cage. He leaned back in his chair, the cafe's noise fading as his mind whirled with the implications of choices left unmade. What did true growth demand from him? He contemplated the countless risks that came with innovation, missteps leading to failures, the possibility of criticism, and even the chance of losing the respect of those he admired. Yet wasn't that discomfort a small price to pay for what could be a profound legacy? Comfort or growth? He whispered to himself, the dichotomy crystallizing like a sharp blade of clarity. He could see the path ahead, one lined with challenges but burgeoning with fertile ground for transformative ideas. Harris's voice broke through his reverie. It's not just about the project. Are you willing to redefine yourself in the process? The inquiry hit deep, the importance of self-evolution washing over him like a flood. Jack had been defined by what his father had achieved, but now he faced a pivotal chance to carve out his narrative. The thought ignited something within him, a growing determination that eclipsed every shadow of doubt. I am, Jack said, the affirmation rolling off his tongue with renewed strength. I want to embrace the growth that comes with discomfort. I've spent too long in the background. It's time to step forward. Harris's satisfied nod reinforced Jack's clarity, yet the fleeting rush of affirmation was tinged with a lingering uncertainty. Could he sustain this momentum? What if the inevitable confrontation shattered his vision? As their conversation unfolded, Jack envisioned the perilous terrain ahead. He opened up, sharing not just ideas but also his apprehensions about leading a team that had relied on his father's reputation. This vulnerability felt oddly freeing, each revelation pinching away at the layers of his doubt. How do you envision starting this new journey? Harris inquired, his tone both probing and encouraging. I need to build a team that believes in the innovation we're aiming for, Jack replied, his confidence simmering. But I also want to foster an environment where we challenge each other. I need diverse perspectives, people who will push back and refine our vision. It's vital that we fail together, learn, and adapt. The concept of creating a genuine collaborative culture resonated within him, a shift away from past norms that craved harmony over constructive conflict. The necessity of rigorous debate and honest feedback became a focal point in his framework for progress. Yet, even as Jack articulated these insights, he could feel the rising tide of anxiety. Could he really facilitate this kind of space? He would need to confront uncomfortable truths, both within himself and among his colleagues. What if he faced resistance not just from others but also from the very core of his identity? The prospect of unearthing deeper personal attributes, tolerance for conflict, vulnerability in leadership intrigued him. The path towards authentic leadership demanded a hard examination of both his strengths and his weaknesses. Then let go of the fear of being uncomfortable, Harris encouraged. Great leaders don't exist in vacuums of security, they thrive amidst chaos. Jack took a deep breath, absorbing this as a challenge for both himself and the organization he was preparing to lead. A gulf of uncertainty gaped ahead, and yet the thought invigorated him more than terrified him. This was not just about inheriting a mantle. It was his chance to redefine what legacy meant, not as a shadow but as a beacon. As they prepared to conclude their meeting, Jack felt fortified by the clarity he had gained. Yet a flicker of concern remained at the back of his mind. Would his vision hold the weight of reality? Could he truly shift the culture? And what if this transformation came at a profound personal cost? With these questions swirling, he stood at the edge of a vibrant yet daunting horizon. The decisions before him held both promise and peril, and he knew the next steps would require not just courage, but a transformation that would shake the very foundations of everything he had known. Just as they parted ways, Harris offered one last challenge. You understand the risks now, Jack. Will you be ready when the moment arrives to put these ideals into action? Jack nodded, commitment hardening in his voice. I will. But deep inside, a tension unfurled. Could he truly sustain this resolve when faced with real obstacles? The door had opened to transformation, but the blood and tears required to walk through it loomed like specters on this new path. The time for action was drawing nearer, and with it, he realized no matter how prepared he felt, the real test awaited just around the corner. How would he handle the inevitable storms ahead? Jack spent the following days ruminating over his conversation with Harris, replaying each point like a haunting melody that refused to fade. The vibrant colors of hope and uncertainty clashed inside him, forging a tapestry of ambition dotted with pinpricks of fear. Each morning, he penned lists of ideas, visions for the team he aspired to build. Yet the deeper he dug, the more he questioned his own capability to lead a group willing to venture into uncharted territory. As the week unfolded, Jack found himself navigating a precarious tightrope. He was tasked with briefing the existing team on strategic initiatives, a group that had grown accustomed to his father as shadow. Jack understood that he couldn't tread lightly. What was at stake was not just innovation, it was a seismic shift in the very culture that had stifled the company for so long. In the conference room, he stood before them, a stark contrast to their familiar executive. The polished image of his father loomed large in the collective memory, but Jack was determined to instill his own essence in this setting. We are going to take risks, he affirmed, a hint of bravado lacing his tone. It's time we embraced failure as part of our journey. But as he spoke, he felt the room's energy shift. Eyes narrowed, brows furrowed. Doubt resonated in the air, thick enough to choke his confidence. Had he miscalculated? For every ounce of determination, a wave of apprehension washed over him. He had opened the door, but did he have the strength to walk through? At the end of the meeting, Sarah, the head of marketing, challenged him directly. What if we fail? What if your plans lead us to a dead end? Are you ready to be responsible for that? Her question echoed Jack's own internal fears. Hers was a voice that spoke for many. I know the stakes, he replied, striving for composure. But if we don't take that leap, we're already at a dead end. As he left the conference room, Jack's stomach twisted. He could almost sense the skepticism that clung to his efforts. He had not only to convince them but to convince himself. In the following days, he immersed himself in books about transformative leadership, strategy, and the art of conversation that inspired. He sought insights that could fortify his resolve against the inevitable pushback, that would arm him for the battles ahead. Yet by the week's end, doubt crept back in. Jack could feel the pressure building, the familiar suffocating grip of expectation tightening around his chest. What if he wasn't the leader they needed? What if, underneath the veneer of creativity and insight, he was just as stifled by fear as his team? Finally, in a move that terrified him, he decided to invite Sarah for coffee. I know you have concerns, he started slowly, watching her carefully. But I value your perspective. I need to hear what you think this team needs. Her surprise faltered under the sincerity of his gaze. Sarah paused but then opened up, providing insights that cut through his doubts, elucidating the fragility of their current culture. With each point she made, Jack felt pieces of his uncertainty chip away, replaced with a sharper vision of the path forward. It was in that candid conversation that he found a glimmer of what leadership truly meant: vulnerability to ask for help, to reveal one's weakness, and to foster genuine dialogue. Jack realized that if innovation was a risk, then collaboration was its lifeblood. By embracing the discomfort of disagreement, he could forge a new path together. Days turned into weeks as he applied this lesson, facilitating meetings where dissent became an avenue for growth. Slowly, the dynamics began to shift. The resistance that had stung him initially started transforming into challenging discussions that sparked innovation. Yet, with each momentum gained, a deeper conflict tugged at him. Was he merely participating in the evolution of a team, or was he truly evolving himself? His mind oscillated with the pressing question, how could he further revolutionize this culture while ensuring he wasn't lost in the process? And as he pondered over these uncertainties, the echo of Harris's voice crept back into his consciousness. Will you be ready to act when the moment arrives? With that lingering thought, Jack knew action was not merely a response. It was the catalyst he needed to confront his own fears, those deeply embedded insecurities that threatened to undercut every step he took. As he prepared to rally his team for an upcoming presentation, a weight settled on him. Excitement mingled with a dread that whispered he was on the precipice of a significant turning point, one that could either propel him forward into uncharted territories or plunge him back into the shadows of doubt. Would he seize the moment and galvanize his vision, or would the fear of failure immobilize him at the critical hour? The very foundation of his resolve teetered, and he understood that to cross this threshold, he had to confront the ultimate storm ahead this time, not just in the office but within himself. Jack approached the day of the presentation with a sense of trepidation that coiled tightly in his stomach. His usual preparations felt inadequate, each rephrased phrase and calculated statistic ringing hollow in his mind. Despite diligent rehearsals in front of the mirror, the specter of uncertainty loomed larger than his confidence. He stepped into the conference room, a gathering space that had once felt like home. Now, each polished surface reflected not just reservation but his growing self-doubt. The faces of his colleagues, once familiar, now seemed like a jury. He felt the weight of their expectations pressing upon him as he shared the cautionary notes of strategic shifts designed to propel the company into a more innovative future. Yet, every word felt like a stutter, each piece of information layered with the fear that he might, in fact, be leading them off a precipice instead of into a bright future. As he launched into his presentation, he noticed Sarah sitting up front, her expression inscrutable. For a fleeting moment, he recalled their previous conversation, her candid feedback, the subtle hints of mentorship hidden beneath her challenges. Those memories sparked a flicker of resolve. He leaned into that flicker, harnessing the energy as fuel to propel his vision. Today, Jack began, steadying his voice, we have an opportunity not just to innovate but to redefine who we are as a team. We can convert risk into reward. He watched his colleagues' expressions carefully, cognitive gears clicking into place. Gradually, their skepticism softened into curiosity, an exchange of glances hinting at a burgeoning willingness to follow him into the unknown. He spoke of innovation not merely as a buzzword, but as a collective journey. He emphasized collaboration as the backbone of their approach. Yet, as he delved deeper into his vision, he couldn't shake the feeling that while he was articulating a compelling narrative, his own internal dialogue was still fighting for relevance. Was he genuinely inspiring them, or merely reciting a script he'd rehearsed in isolation? With each flip of the presentation slide, he reminded himself that leadership was an invitation to share vulnerabilities. On an impulse that surprised even him, he decided to forego the remaining prepared slides. Leaning in toward his colleagues, he invited them to engage. What do you think we're missing here? What would you risk? The room, initially tense like a drawn bowstring, began to unlock. To his surprise, hands shot up, ideas flooding forth, perspectives that had been suppressed all along were finally emerging. Each contribution fortified Jack's courage, creating a tangible shift in the room. He found himself guiding rather than directing, encouraging candid dialogue and welcoming every divergent thought that came his way. As discussions deepened, he noticed Sarah nodding, engagement written on her face. That acknowledgement fueled Jack's growing resolve. Perhaps his true challenge lay in not forcing his vision but instead in curating a collective narrative that allowed others to feel ownership. But just as momentum surged, hesitation surfaced again. Doubts nibbled at his courage, questioning whether he was merely engaging in a performance. Was this heartfelt collaboration, or was he still masking uncertainty with borrowed conviction? He found himself veering dangerously close to a self-deprecating spiral. Are we ahead of our time? What if this great idea falters? He questioned internally, regretting his momentary lapse into uncertainty, clenching his jaw in frustration against his own inner critic. Disrupting the wave of doubt, Sarah stood to share her thoughts once more. Jack, innovation is about pushing boundaries. Every time we step into the unknown, we also open new avenues. We can't predict failure, but we can learn from it. Her words resonated, crystallizing the kernel of his struggle. Jack realized this was not merely about him forging a path, but creating an environment where ideas, even the wildest ones, could emerge without suppression. He felt a surge of gratitude towards Sarah, understanding that her challenge had not been an obstacle, but a catalyst. As the presentation concluded, the tone of the team had shifted entirely. What had once been a daunting assembly was now buzzing with potential. Conversations flowed into informal discussions as colleagues exchanged ideas and laughter, painting a picture of a vibrant team rekindled by possibility. This seemed to be a breakthrough, but beneath the surface, doubt lingered. Had he really come far enough? Could he maintain this new momentum without losing himself in the process? As he prepared to head out, he couldn't shake the nagging question of whether this shift signaled a mere surface-level transformation or the beginning of a deeper journey within himself. With the room buzzing behind him, Jack stepped out into the hallway, a tiny knot tightening in his chest as he considered the consequences of this newfound direction. The road stretched ahead, but the prospect of continued vulnerability loomed large ahead, and perhaps, without it, his leadership might falter when it truly mattered. Well aware that his own evolution needed to match the team's, Jack gripped the doorknob tight. Would he rise to meet the challenge not just of leading a team but in clarifying who he was as a leader? Would he embrace genuine vulnerability, even if it appeared messy? As he prepared for the next moves in this extraordinary venture, the true test of his growth was imminent. Would he find the resolve needed for the challenges to come, or would his fear once again become the anchor holding him back? Walking away from the conference room, Jack felt an odd mixture of exhilaration and dread. The adrenaline of leading the presentation coursed through him, yet the whispers of doubt clung like shadows. He had embraced vulnerability, and in doing so, he realized how much he had underestimated the power of genuine collaboration. However, uncertainty about the sustainability of this newfound energy gnawed at him. How could he ensure that what had sparked today would not grow cold again? As he navigated through the office hallways, Jack's mind raced beyond the presentation. He recalled the firm grasp of Sarah's words: innovation requires stepping into the unknown. He felt a relentless urge to capitalize on that momentum, to push it further and uncover more about his limits and the team's potential. There was an itch for exploration, but the echo of skepticism reverberated loud enough to make him pause. Jack ducked into his office, taking a breath, allowing the weight of the moment to settle. He realized he needed a plan, a strategic approach that could translate the inspiration from the presentation into actionable goals. But what should be the focus of his next steps? Innovation itself? Or perhaps fostering an atmosphere of trust that could nurture new ideas without fear? The clutter on his desk felt suffocating as he absently shuffled through papers. Each document fluttered like reminders of limitations he hoped to challenge. His eyes landed on an old notebook, the spine cracked and pages yellowed. Here lay thoughts from the early days of his career, filled with raw aspirations and dreams of becoming a leader who could ignite change. He hadn't opened this in years. Why had he let that fire wane? Flipping through the pages stirred a hunger he thought he had lost. The ambition written in youthful, fearless ink urged him to find his core again, to embrace the very essence that drew him to leadership in the first place. Ideas surged forth: team workshops, brainstorming sessions, mentorship initiatives, all designed to create a culture of innovation where vulnerability was not just accepted, but celebrated. But even as Jack plotted, doubts resurfaced. What if these efforts were merely flashy attempts that wouldn't produce lasting change? What if his team saw through what they perceived as superficial enthusiasm? He squeezed his eyes shut, desperate for clarity as the internal battle within him crescendoed. He could lead with authenticity, but could he maintain that vulnerability in the face of potential backlash, or, Worse, failure? Focus, he muttered to himself, carefully erecting a mental wall against the insecurity bubbling inside. Real leadership didn't equate to a flawless track record. It meant adapting, learning, and fostering a space where failure was just a stepping stone. Resolved, he jotted down notes for a shared brainstorming session, the first step toward fortifying the bridge he envisioned between his colleagues and the untapped potential he sensed waiting just beneath the surface. It could become a ritual of candid expression, where ideas flourished in the glow of open discourse, allowing his team to lead with courage. Just then, the door creaked open. Sarah stepped in, her brow furrowed in thought. "Can we talk?" she asked tentatively, sensing perhaps the turmoil that churned inside him. "Of course," Jack replied, intrigued yet wary of her presence. She stepped fully into the office, leaning against the doorframe with an air of unspoken understanding. "Your presentation was a turning point. But I'm not just here to commend you," she said, tone shifting to something more serious. "I see potential in you, Jack. But if we're going to embrace these changes you've sparked, we'll need to confront the challenges head-on. Some of our colleagues are resistant to vulnerability. They equate it with weakness." Jack froze, realizing the heart of the upcoming battle lay right there. If ideas were to sprout, so too must they navigate the suffocating fear of failure some carried like armor. "We have to challenge that narrative," he said, the conviction returning to his voice. "It won't be easy." Sarah's eyes met his, a spark igniting. "Then let us prepare to confront it together." As they began to strategize, the pieces fell into place. Jack felt a surge of purpose, his anxiety dissolving into determination. Today's shift in dynamics was not just about positivity, it was the foundation for a new legacy. But somewhere in the back of his mind, a dark thread pulled. Could he genuinely lead this charge? Was he prepared to face not just the skepticism of others, but the inevitable trials that lay ahead? Would he be able to dismantle the walls of fear within not just his team, but also within himself? Jack met Sarah's gaze, sensing the enormity of the journey ahead, both exhilarating and daunting. The time had come to face not only their colleagues but also the white-knuckled grip of his own insecurities. Jack took a deep breath, the weight of unspoken fears lingering in the air. As they leaned into strategizing their next steps, he focused on establishing a safe space where vulnerability could thrive, yet doubt still shadowed his resolve. "What do we do first?" he asked, determined to put their plans into action, even as the voices of uncertainty whispered in the corners of his mind. Sarah smiled, her enthusiasm infectious. "Let us start with a casual lunch and learn session. Invite the team to share ideas in an informal setting. People are more open when they feel relaxed." Jack nodded, the concept resonating. Yet, a flurry of thoughts tugged at him. What if it flopped? What if his team remained disengaged? He pushed the doubts aside, mentally cataloging the logistics. "Okay, I'll coordinate with catering and set up a time next week. But what if some people opt out? I don't want to force participation. Leave the door open. Create an invitation, not a summons. Be open about the intention behind it, fostering creativity and innovation together," Sarah advised, her gaze steady. As Jack scribbled ideas down, the simplicity of her suggestion struck a chord. This approach could set the stage for something larger, where dialogue replaced silence and breakthrough became a possibility. But would his resolve hold when the time came to face potential rejection from his colleagues? The doubts kept resurfacing, lurking beneath his aspirations to create a culture that celebrated transparency. He thought of Dylan, the market analyst notorious for his cynicism, often curbing enthusiasm with snide comments. Jack tucked that concern into an internal drawer for later inspection, focusing instead on the present task. That evening, as Jack returned home, he found himself engrossed in a mix of excitement and anxiety. He pored over the old notebook once more. This time, a particular entry caught his attention, an ambition listed in bold letters: "Lead with heart." It was a reminder of what had first ignited his passion for leadership. The vision behind his aspirations hadn't vanished, it had merely been obscured. Jack felt compelled to reconnect with that vision. If he could carve out a space of trust and mutual respect in the workplace, Perhaps the fear of vulnerability could be replaced with a shared commitment to growth. He flipped the pages, envisioning how to inject that youthful vitality into his plans. The next day, he gathered the team for the lunch and learn. Reluctance hung in the air like a stubborn fog, but Jack greeted each member openly. "I know this may feel different," he began, "but we're here to explore ideas together. Let us build something fearlessly." Much to his surprise, a few colleagues began voicing their thoughts, contributing insights that led to a spark of creativity. Yet, just as the energy escalated, Dylan's voice sliced through, cynical as ever. "You really think this will change anything? Creativity without execution is just chatter." The air thickened, murmurs ebbing. Jack's stomach dropped. "Dylan," he replied, keeping his tone steady, "every journey begins with a conversation. If we can't talk freely, how can we foster ideas?" The words surprised him, a testament to the change he wanted to see in not just his team, but also his leadership. The reply came, laced with skepticism but far less hostile than before. "Sure, but how do we actually do anything meaningful?" Before he could reply, a quiet voice from the back chimed in. Hannah, usually timid yet confident when it came to design. "If we brainstorm together, we can map out actionable steps. We're better as a collective, right?" Encouraged by her insight, Jack seized the moment. "Exactly. Let us write our ideas down, and then assess how we can transform these into actions." As the session progressed, Jack felt a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, they were starting to shift the narrative. Yet the shadow of Dylan's skepticism lingered, a reminder of the larger challenge ahead. Would this fleeting moment lead to lasting change, or would the old habits resurface once again once the novelty wore off? Jack left the meeting energized, yet the internal battle continued. Each step towards fostering this new environment felt as gargantuan as it was essential. But in the depths of his mind, a renewed question echoed louder than before: could he hold the line in transforming a culture stymied by fear? The path ahead remained tangled, but now illuminated by a burgeoning resolve. He was on the brink of something significant, yet the vulnerability it would demand gnawed at him still. Just then, he caught sight of Sarah crossing the hallway, a knowing smile on her face. She had been watching the exchange, her approval evident. As they locked eyes, he felt a shift not just in his work, but within himself. But what he didn't anticipate was the unexpected email that dinged in his inbox. It was a formal request for feedback on the lunch event from upper management. Could this have repercussions he had not yet considered? The stakes were on the rise. Jack stood at the precipice of change, both personally and professionally. The feedback request loomed large in his mind, yet what emerged from his colleagues during the lunch and learn had ignited a spark he could hardly ignore. Each hesitant voice, each flicker of hope contributed to a collective renaissance within the team. But it wasn't merely about the team anymore. Jack's journey had turned inward, channeling the essence of who he wanted to become. Over the following weeks, he paired groundbreaking ideas with heartfelt collaboration. The skeleton of a new strategy began to take shape, layers of innovation intertwined with a culture of creativity, founded on vulnerability. Jack immersed himself in framework meetings, but this time it was different. He opened the floor to discussions, embracing constructive dissension rather than shutting down opposing voices. During one such meeting, he shared his ambition. Innovation thrives in the sea of discomfort. Every failure propels us towards success. As he looked around at his colleagues, he saw not just acceptance, but genuine buy-in, a palpable conviction that they could foster transformation together. A significant shift took place within Jack. He was no longer just the son of a legacy. He was now a creator of his narrative, armed with renewed confidence. Every brainstorming session morphed into a collaboration incubator, producing tangible goals. Yet even as he basked in the fruit of collective labor, the lingering thought of how upper management would respond kept pricking at his resolve. At the upcoming executive meeting, Jack prepared himself meticulously. Visuals showcased the unfolding project, framed by efforts to interweave innovation into the culture of the company. He walked into the room, heart racing, yet felt invincible with the backing of a team who believed in the vision. As he presented, moments of vulnerability emerged, and he didn't shy away from them. We're unearthing potential through open dialogue, he asserted. As a team, we've faced our fears and rejected stagnation. The energy shifted. His passion crackled through the air when he spoke of the results blossoming from this collaboration. Upper management exchanged glances, signaling interest yet skepticism. As Jack dug deeper into the framework they had enacted, he was interrupted by a familiar voice, Dylan, embodying the role of devil's advocate. What if it fails? What if these new ideals crumble under pressure? Jack could be flinched, but instead, he felt emboldened. Failure is not our enemy but our teacher. We're willing to learn rather than retreat. At that moment, he realized his growth transcended the job. It was leading from a place of authenticity and courage. He was no longer shackled by fear. Instead, he wielded it as a tool for honest dialogue. As the discussion progressed, nods of approval began to punctuate their exchanges. By the end of the meeting, the executive team expressed their belief in the vision. They pledged their support for funding and resources to further cultivate this newly budding culture. Jack felt a surge of elation. His leap into the unknown had yielded tangible results. Through the fluctuating tides of doubt and triumph, Jack cultivated a newfound self-awareness. He reflected he was not just executing a project but reshaping the fabric of a team destined for innovation. His transformation culminated in an executive endorsement, affirming his ascendance as a recognized leader. With each moment, Jack demonstrated that courage intertwined with vulnerability could yield remarkable progress. The power to lead did not stem from titles but from a commitment to authenticity, empathy, and collaboration. With recognition imprinted in the dialogues of his colleagues and in the praise pouring in from management, Jack claimed not just a title but his identity as a transformative leader. As the echoes of that pivotal meeting faded, Jack found himself at a crossroads. He could continue enriching his journey of discovery or allow complacency to creep back in. Gazing out at the Chicago skyline from his office window, the vision of possibilities stretched out before him. It was time to formulate the next leg of his journey, not just another project, but a legacy built on trust, innovation, and the courage to embrace discomfort. Ultimately, Jack had conquered more than just a professional challenge. He had fortified his character, proving to himself the depths of his capabilities. The weight of expectation had transformed into the wings of ambition, lifting him into the air of entrepreneurship. As his journey forward crystallized, Jack took a moment to revel in a profound self-affirmation. He was not merely a man following in his father's footsteps. He had forged a path of his own, one that resonated with purpose, authenticity, and a commitment to harnessing the technical legacy he had inherited into an impactful future. You need to subscribe now so you don't miss the next exclusive emotional stories that inspire personal growth. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help others find their path to transformation. Comment your thoughts on Jack's journey and share your theories about what's next. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Your support is essential for creating a community rooted in the power of personal overcoming stories.